سارة، صار عندي حادث سيارة واتصلت بالمحامي قاجي.
قصدين أنتي المحامي قاجي؟
يعني هذا المكتب اللي قالوا عليه أكبر مكتب محاماة عربي كلداني بأمريكا قاجي؟
لا أنا محامي بالقاجي لا، أنا أعرف لورنس هو قال لي قاجي لا.
أنا أعرف العائلة زين يقولوها قاجي.
بعد أي حادث سيارة اتصلوا بي، أنا محامي لورنس قاجي. 248-702-6641 248-702-6641.
أعزائي المستمعين، أعزائي المشاهدين، برنامج المحامي لورنس قاجي. طبعا معنا في الاستوديو المحامي لورنس قاجي وأيضا المحامي جان شرودر. طبعا نرحب بالأستاذ لورنس. Welcome, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you for having us. We're excited for today's show.
Welcome, Mr. John.
Thank you as always. It's a pleasure.
وأهلا وسهلا بالعزيزة الباراليغال الست تمارا للترجمة.
أهلا وسهلا بالجميع.
طبعا شوية أنت دائما صوتك ناصي فأنا راح أعلي كلش شو أسوي يعني أحاول
يعني قدر إمكاني
أن ترفعي صوتك.
بالضبط.
نعم، طبعا إحنا كل حلقة نتحدث عن موضوع معين وإحنا دا نكررها عدة مرات. من دا نبدي فد موضوع ما دا يخلص
بالضبط،
دا نضيف له ساعة أخرى وأيضا ما دا يخلص لأنه موضوع مهم وطويل.
بالضبط، وهو هاي واحدة من أهم المراحل بالقضاية واللي هي الإفادة مال القضية.
نعم، هسه اليوم أيضا راح نتحدث
بالضبط وشنو تتضمن.
نعم.
الإفادة.
نعم.
وحكينا بالمراحل الأولية ووصلنا بأنه لكم حق بأنه يكون يدفعوا لكم حكينا عن الرواتب وحكينا على المساعدات البيتية.
نعم.
راح نخلص هاليوم على المساعدات الصحية.
نعم.
والترانسبورتيشن
التنقلات والشغلات.
المواصلات شلون تروح وتجي للأطباء.
نعم.
ونكمل الحديث
ونشوف وين نوصل.
بالضبط.
نعم.
So today we are going to continue. We are still in our one of the most, it is not just the most, it's one of the most important period in the case, which is the depositions. And what is the deposition? And we went over it, and we spoke about what is a deposition and what is the what they need and what they see in it and what we can get out of it. Mm-hmm. We talked about the household services. We talked about the lost wages, and we reached by the attending care. Mm-hmm. So we are going to finish probably beginning with an attending care.
Yeah.
So I did miss last week. So I do kind of want to recap a little bit of what we missed.
Yep.
So John did a great job of going over things. You know, it was funny. Actually, we just realized this morning that we're actually reading off of two separate documents. So let's recap everything just to make sure we're covering all bases, right?
Sure. And also, I think for the listeners who didn't hear us last time, we should just quickly recap what a deposition is and, you know, what the purpose of it is. So, you know, in any case, at a certain point, you enter what's called the discovery phase of the case. And the discovery phase of the case is where the parties exchange information. And part of that is depositions. And depositions are basically a sit-down session where a deponent is under oath. And most of the time, a plaintiff or someone who's claiming an injury is going to be that deponent. So they're going to be under oath, and they're going to be asked questions. And their job is to answer those questions. And so what we're talking about today is some of those questions that might be asked and why it's important.
مثل ما قلنا بأنه احنا نكمل الموضوع مالتنا على مود الإفادة اللي هي تكون بمرحلة الاكتشاف اللي تصير للقضية، وهي هاي من أهم المراحل بأنه الزبون يكون أول مرة أهل الإنشورنس يقدرون يشوفوه ويسألوا كل الأسئلة اللي يقدرون يسألوها واللي هم يعرفون الأجوبة مالتها. وياخذون كل المعلومات اللي يقدرون ياخذوها من الزبون. وطبعا بحضور المحامي. ومثل ما قلنا احنا دائما تحضير الزبون مالتنا نحضره قبل ساعتين من الاجتماع مالتهم حتى لا ينسى وحتى نذكره بالاشياء ونمشي بالناقة.
Yes. Yeah, so we're going to pick up in talking about what we call damages, right? So every case that we file on and that we litigate as part of these, depositions is just part of one process in the litigation. But as we're litigating, obviously, we need to have damages, right? We need to have things, monetary damages that we're claiming, essentially. And without any damages, there's no case, nothing to fight over, right? So you have to have, damages can be a lot of things, which we'll go over. We'll start with the medical bills part, which is a huge part of your PIP case, right? That is, sometimes it's the biggest part of your PIP case is when the adjuster denies your claim, and you're stuck with a ton of medical bills that if you don't file a suit and get those settled out, you will be responsible for.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي، القضية تعتمد بالدرجة الأولى على الأضرار. إذا ماكو أضرار ماكو قضية. الأضرار تكون جسدية طبعا، إحنا لأن هذا اختصاصنا. الأضرار الجسدية بأنه أنت متأذي ولازم نثبت هاي الأذية، ولازم تروح للأطباء حتى تشوفها. فأول مرحلة أول شيء أهم شيء بأنه عندك أنت الفواتير الطبية. الفواتير الطبية هاي من أهم مرحلة لازم تندفع كلها عن طريق الإنشورنس مال السيارة. إذا أنت عندك السيارة أو أنت
مع السائق، يعني ويا السائق
أولوية بأنه أنت عندك الإنشورنس مال السيارة أولوي، والإنشورنس الطبي هو الثانوي.
So we will start with medical bills. So the first medical bill that sometimes our clients incur is the hospital bill, right? Or
that and the ambulance.
Yeah, let's take this one step back. So the ambulance comes to the scene of the accident and they take you to a hospital because you're injured, and that's generally what happens in cases where there's a car accident, there's injuries. The ambulance obviously is going to have a medical bill, right? So they are billing emergency transportation services. So they will, whatever the bill amount is, I've seen anywhere between $200 to $800 for, one emergency ride. And they will bill the auto insurance to pay that bill. And if they don't pay it, then obviously it gets included in our lawsuit against the insurance company.
من أول البلات المهمة اللي تجي عندنا بأنه هي أول شيء الشخص من يصير بحادث يعني يخابر الإسعاف. فأول شيء أول فاتورة طبية هي سيارة الإسعاف، ومرات يعني سعرها يكون عالي، خاصة إذا لازم يروحون إلى مكانات شوية يعني أبعد. مرات هاي البلات توصل إلى $800-900. وهاي إذا ما تندفع عن طريق الإنشورنس لازم بعدين تصير تتضمن من نسوي التسوية. إذا ما اندفعت بوقتها لازم إحنا نضمها للتسوية، حتى من نسوي التسوية لازم هم يدفعوها. نعم.
And one of the excuses I would say that they use for not paying a bill is they say it's not related to the accident, right? So whatever this bill is, it has nothing to do with the accident. I love when they deny ambulance bills. Why? Because what reasonable arguments can you make to say that an ambulance ride after somebody gets into a car accident saying they were injured, going to a hospital, how can you claim that's not related to the accident? How can you claim that?
Well, there's an answer.
There is an answer.
It's not a good answer, but
who will answer it? You?
Sure. I mean, the reality is sometimes they just don't even believe the accident happened in the first place. So, which is really interesting.
That's one great way of getting interest in attorney fees is when they deny the ambulance bill.
Yes. واحدة من الأشياء بأنه الإنشورنس ترفض تدفع الإسعاف، سيارة الإسعاف، تقول بأنه هاي الحادث ما يعني هذا الضرر مو بسبب الحادث، لا بسبب شنو؟ هذا هذا أحلى سؤال ينسأل بالنسبة لنا، وهذا يعني أحلى شيء نقدر نجاوبه.
When I say ambulance bill that's not paid, I
yes.
right away.
yes. الشغلة الثانية مرات هم يقولون احتمال يعني الحادث ما كان صاير وبس انتوا خابرتوا الإسعاف، فهاي هم فد سبب ثاني.
كيف نثبت؟
No, so I had a case one time where they denied the ambulance bill because my client had a lot of pre-existing injuries.
Yes.
And they said, well, whatever injuries he had or whatever he was going to the hospital for was not related to the accident.
Right.
We used that, even though it was a small bill, we used that a lot in our case in order to get that case settled, and we got a good amount on it, very good amount actually. And that was the starting point. How, telling the judge, how can they deny this bill? My client gets into a rear end accident and he's going to the hospital. They don't want to pay this bill. How is that possible?
مثل ما تفضل المحامي قال بأنه الانشورنس ترفض بأنه احتمال كان عنده هو أضرار قبل الحادث.
نعم.
بس ما هذا هاي مو يمنع بأنه لازم ما يدفعون الفاتورة. فلذلك هذا أول خطوة بالقضية لازم تنحل هي الفاتورة مال الإسعاف. وهاي أول شيء قدام الحاكم. شلون أنت صاير عندك حادث ومرات أكثر الحالات أنت تخابر حتى تجيك شرطة، الشرطة هي تخابر لك الإسعاف بأنه أنت والحريق بأنه أنت محتاجه. بالضبط.
زين القائمة مال الحريق ما تيجي قائمة من الحريق أيضا لو بس من الأمبولانس؟
همينة مرات yes همينة yes fire departments. We do also get
bill from them too.
Yes.
So it's the fire department has their own EMS, which is essentially the same thing as an ambulance bill.
It's the same sort of thing.
Yes. Okay.
So ambulance bill is not paid. We include it in the lawsuits. That's part of our damages.
Yeah. واحدة من الأضرار بأنه إذا الفاتورة مال سيارة الإسعاف ما تندفع، هاي أول فاتورة تتضمن من القضية حتى نسوي لها تسوية.
Yeah. So the next thing that you'll generally see is clients go to the hospital after the accident, and the hospital will do various things. Do X-rays, sometimes some MRIs.
That can generate a lot of bills.
Right. I've seen hospital bills from hundreds of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh yes.
So that can obviously range depending on your injuries and what they need to do at the hospital. But same sort of thing, the hospital will bill your auto insurance company, and if they deny it for whatever reason, your bill will be included in the lawsuit.
Yep.
الفاتورة الثانية اللي يستلمها الانشورنس هي فاتورة المستشفى. فاتورة المستشفى أنت عندك الامرجنسي روم وعندك الأطباء، التحاليل السي تي سكان، الامراي، الاكس راي، أي شيء تحتاجه أنت، عمليات إذا تحتاج، عندك كسور، تضميد، يعني بعد مستشفى تعرف كل شيء بيها. بالضبط. هاي كلها تتضمن بالمال المستشفى بأنه حادث سيارة. دائما ما أدري إذا أنت تروح للمستشفى أول شيء يسألوك هل أنت هذا الضرر اليوم راح يشوفك الطبيب على موده هل أنت كنت بحادث سيارة لو أنت عادي، لأنه حادث سيارة يروح عن طريق الانشورنس مال السيارة.
And if I can just interject here on this particular point, when you go to a hospital, it's not necessarily just one bill. I mean, I've seen a hospital bill for $400,000, but I have seen cases where the hospitals are actually employing independent contractors within the hospital. Okay, so you could get a bill for, as an example, a radiologist, who performed an MRI. You can get a bill from a surgeon who performed a surgery. You can get a bill for the medications that were prescribed, all separately from the actual facility fee that the hospital is charging you to be there.
Hospital.
All at the same hospital. Okay, and so you could end up with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bills, in theory at least, from a single hospital stay, even from a single day.
That means they don't gather it and send it in one time or from one place. Yeah.
So they could, but they don't necessarily have to do it that way because, again, they can contract with other businesses.
Contractors.
You know, as one example, there's a hospital in Michigan that I had a case where they did a surgery for a patient, and just from that one facility, I had the surgeon's bill, I had the facility bill,
yes,
I had an anesthesiologist bill because they used anesthesia, okay, and then I had a separate bill for the medications that were prescribed. So just out of that one stay, I had 4 bills.
At one time.
all at one time.
From different,
مثل ما تفضل المحامي جان بأنه حتى المستشفى مرات مو تجي فاتورة واحدة، تجي عدة فاتورات، للأشعة واحد، للتحليل واحد، إذا تحتاج عملية واحد، إذا تحتاج تخدير واحد، أدويتك واحد، فتجي عدة قوائم. لازم نكون كلش حذرين ونطلب من المستشفى دائما أو من أي طبيب الزبون يروح له دائما نطلب المجموع الكامل مال الزيارات كلها حتى لا أكو فاتورة تروح على صفحة وبعدين تصير على عاتق الزبون.
جيد.
So same deal here. Hospital bill doesn't get paid, and we would include that as a damage to our lawsuit.
Yeah, and as far as the deposition, I mean, this what's going on for the clients, right? What they're testifying to is that they got in an ambulance, they went to the hospital, they had these procedures done, they had the diagnostic testing done, and so essentially the insurance company is verifying that these treatments occurred, right?
That's a good point. Why are we even talking about this, right?
Right.
Because of deposition.
واحنا نحكي على هالموضوع على مود الإفادة لازم تكون بأنه بالأخير هاي كل هالفواتير تكون إضافة إلى التسوية حتى تكون كلها مغطاية.
Right. So then, you know, on the medical bills portion, we're going to go through all of the doctors that they treated at. So they're going to be asked about every single doctor. So ambulance to the hospital, they'll ask you about the treatment you got at the hospital. Then who's the next doctor you saw after that? Was your primary care doctor? Or did you go follow up with him? Because the hospitals oftentimes, you know, what I see 9 out of 10 times, they'll just check you, make sure there's no broken bones, and they will send you on your way to say, hey, follow up with your primary care doctor. Everything looks fine on our end. There's no broken bones, nothing that we need to address right now. And then they follow up with their primary care doctor after that.
Yeah. Or if there is something, then they might tell you to go to a specialist, in which case the next doctor you see is a specialist. You know.
من تروح للإمرجنسي للإسعافات الأولية الطبيب أول يشوفوك بأنه أنت لازم تكون حالتك ثابتة. طبعا يشيكوك بأنه ما عندك كسور وما عندك أي يعني داخلي اللي هو يعني bleeding بالضبط. هاي أهم شيء. من يشيكوك هيك وما بيك شيء يقولوا لك خلاص أنت حاليا حالتك مستقرة بس لازم ورا ما تفر أسبوع روح إذا بعدك متوجع روح شوف طبيبك العام لأنه الانشورنس دائما تسأل رحت إسعاف رحت مستشفى ويا طبيب شفت ورا المستشفى دائما يسألون.
فهذا حتى لو طبيبك العام يعني
حتى لو طبيبك العام تروح عليه مرات يشوفون اكو فشي مثلا ركبك مثلا وارمه لو كتفك وارم يدزوك الى اخصائي عظام لو مفاصل حتى يعني بس حتى يسوون تحاليل اكثر. فيعتمد على المستشفى وعلى الاضرار اللي انت بيها والمن راح يدزوك عليها.
طبعا اي واحد اذا عنده سؤال عنده استفسار يقدر يتصل بينا على 586-825-2015. معنا المحامي لورنس قاجي، المحامي جان شرودر. اي واحد عنده سؤال استفسار. طبعا دائما نحب نذكر انه الاستشارات في قاجي لو فيرم هي مجانيه. تقدرون تتصلون بهم على 248-702-6641.
Now, you know, what's interesting about this too is, you know, this sounds really easy, right? I mean, you're testifying as to what happened to you. And yet if you think about the way human memories work, it's really not always necessarily that simple, because if you're testifying 2 years after an accident occurs, you may not remember every place that you went, right? I mean, think about a course of treatment for someone who's in an accident who broke, I don't know, an arm. Just really simply, just one injury, they broke their arm, right? So they're going to have that ambulance, okay? They're going to go to the hospital. They're going to have to get a cast on. They're going to have to come back at least either to that hospital or another doctor to get the cast off, potentially, right? They might have pain medications. They go to a pharmacy. And if you're thinking back 2 years, I've had clients who couldn't remember which ambulance picked them up. I mean, that makes sense, right? I've had clients who didn't remember which hospital they went to.
Even before 1 month.
Right, even a month later, right?
Remember, the deposition's happening a year and a half after the accident.
Right. Exactly.
Literally 18 months after.
Yeah.
You're being asked very specific questions about the accident, where you went, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That means you have to write everything as a note.
Not really.
Not necessarily.
So when we discuss with our clients prior to the deposition, we go over a list of the treatment providers.
You have the dates.
Yeah, I mean, we go over the list of the providers, and we make sure that they they're kind of aware of why all these providers are being claimed and stuff like that.
Right.
And obviously it's their case, so we need to make sure that the bills get paid. That's the most important part.
Because the case will take like 1 year, 2 years sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It for sure can. I mean, there are cases that can resolve that I've resolved in 3 months or 6 months, and then there are cases that drag on for 3 years.
Time.
Yes.
You just never know. It depends on a lot of different factors, right? It depends on the insurance company, it depends on the adjuster, it depends on how clear the facts are, it depends whether the person has pre-existing conditions, and there's many things that go into it.
Surviving or still
hopefully, yeah.
Yes.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه يعني مو سهولة. احنا بشر ننسى. واحد يقول شلون أنا أنسى يوم الحادث مالي؟ الحياة تنسيك، صح لا مو صحيح؟
صحيح.
وطبيعي هذا، فشيء جدا طبيعي. ورا لأنه الإفادة من الصير ورا سنة ونص سنتين من وراء الحادث. احتمال تتذكر يا شهر، بس يا يوم كان الحادث احتمال ما تتذكره. صح لا مو صحيح؟ شلون راح تتذكر أنت بذاك اللحظة ومتأذي لو ومتضرر وخايف، وتجي سيارة إسعاف تاخذك، أنت بيا حال تشوف يا سيارة إسعاف مين إجتي مين راحت ما تتذكر. صح لا مو صحيح؟ ياخذوك المستشفى، أنت الطب أنت قاعد بالسيارة اللي ورا كلها مغلفة، الطب بالمستشفى من ورا.
يا مستشفى بالبداية.
بالضبط بالبداية على ما تجيك الأوراق احتمال. بس هذا همنا واحدة من شغلنا وعلى عاتقنا، بأنه هاي الساعتين اللي نحضر بها الزبون بأنه نذكره ونسأل همينا، بحيث واحد يذكر اللاخ بأنه الميموري مالت الذاكرة بأنه ريفرشت بالضبط. هاي واحدة من الأشياء الجدا مهمة.
So after your primary care doctor, let's say you're treating for a little while and your pain is not resolved. Sometimes I've seen the primary care doctor refer you to a specialist. So it could be all different kind of specialists. There are a lot of different doctors out there. And it could be it could be an orthopedic doctor, it could be a it could be anybody. But essentially what they're going to ask is what who you treated with exactly related to the car accident. They might even ask who you treated with that you don't think is related to the car accident, so they can get some records on that. They'll also go over any surgeries that were done, physical therapy, where they did physical therapy at. If they saw a chiropractor, and they will go into your treatment, like I was saying, you would have a surgery done. There could be some injections that have been done. I mentioned physical therapy. These are all things that they're going to ask you about. And the reason they're asking you about this is, generally speaking, the more aggressive treatment that you get is going to be sort of related to the
the severity of the incident, right? I mean, if you have to treat for 16 months and as opposed to 1 month, it's going to be a more serious accident.
What I'm trying to say is the liability part on the insurance company's end this is where they get a lot of the stuff from. So if they see that, hey, you went to the hospital one time, you follow up with your primary care doctor a couple times, and that was the extent of your treatment, they know that they're not going to be responsible for much in terms of how much they're going to settle for at the end of the day. But if you said that, you've had a few surgeries done, you've had physical therapy for a pretty long time, injections, they know that their liability is going to be
potentially
more.
A lot higher.
Yes.
الانشورنس راح تسألك يا مستشفى رحت وراها منو ويا من تعالجت الأطباء، نوع الأطباء، إذا بس رحت على كم مرة ورا المستشفى ورا الحادث، رحت للمستشفى وبعدين رحت لطبيبك العام مرتين ثلاثة، لا تتوقع اكو تسويه كبيره. بينما اذا رحت للاطباء وراها رحت اخصائيين ورحت سويت تحليل لو ضربت ابر لو سويت عمليه، كلها هاي اشياء تكبر القضيه همينه. سو يعتمد بالضبط على انت العلاج اللي تحتاجه. تحتاج قليل قضيتك قليله، تحتاج علاج اكبر قضيتك أكبر،
مدة أطول
بالضبط. طبعا أي أحد عنده أي استفسار خلي يتصل بينا
على 586-825-2015. طبعا أي واحد عنده مشكلة يقدر يتصل بالمكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي. الاستشارات مجانية، يتحدثون العربي، يعني أنت تخابر تقدر تحكي وياهم، تقول لهم أريد أحكي عربي
بالضبط.
تشرح.
طبعا احنا دائما موجودين، اذا انا ما موجوده اكو بالضبط بنات غيري موجودين همينه، ونقدر نساعد اي احد. رقم الاوفيس مالتنا 248-702-6641.
Yes.
Oh, you know that.
Thank God I didn't give my cell phone.
Halfway through, I actually did that this morning. I was giving out the office number, and I started with my cell phone number.
Yes, I do it.
تصير هذه طبعا اعتيادي لانه السيل فون ما ينسي.
Yes.
One thing we didn't mention was the MRI. So oftentimes the doctors will prescribe an MRI for you if you're in back pain, but the X-rays don't show any broken bones, and they want to figure out what's going on. They'll send you out for an MRI. John, why are the MRI readings and medical records so important to your case, in particular a bodily injury case in Michigan?
Yeah, we touched on this last time a little bit, but the MRIs are a lot different from an X-ray, right? So an X-ray will show broken bones, generally speaking. And I'm not a doctor, but I've seen, about 1,000
of MRIs and
cases with 1,000 each medical records. So I can tell you, X-rays, when they're done in the hospital, what are they usually looking for? They're looking for acute injuries, like broken bones and lacerations, meaning cuts and scars, things like that. That's what they're going to be looking for on a person, right? But X-rays are a very, very small part of the picture. X-rays will only show certain types of injuries. MRIs tend to show muscle, right, and tissue that X-rays just don't show. Because when you look at an X-ray image, if you think about that still black and white, classic hand, behind, white hand picture of a bone with the black image behind it, right? What's that really showing? That's showing your bones, right? But injuries, especially with regards to motor vehicle accidents, aren't limited to your bones, right? You could have injuries to ligaments, you could have injuries to muscle, you could have, just as a few examples of things that tend to show up on MRIs that do not show on X-rays typically would be disc herniations.
You mean MRI show you everything?
They don't show you everything. They show you a different set of things. Okay. And that's why there are so many different diagnostic tests, right? So video fluoroscopic or digital motion X-rays are an interesting diagnostic test that can show ligament damage a little more easily because they show a rapid series of X-rays, okay? But that a single X-ray might not show. CT scans, right, are yet another type of test. MRIs are their own test. There's something called ENGs, EMGs, and when EMGs can show like electrical impulses to determine if there's nerve damage. There's a whole lot of different diagnostic tests that can show different issues. So when you go for that initial hospital visit and you get an X-ray, that may show some injuries, but that's not necessarily the whole story. So to answer your question, why is getting, another diagnostic test like an MRI so important is because that gives you a more complete picture of what's actually injured.
الأضرار بدنا نحكي عنها بأنه لازم نسوي تحاليل. واحدة من التحاليل أول شيء بنروح للمستشفى يسوي لك الأشعة العادية، الأشعة السينية احنا نسميها، اللي هي توقف ويبين هي لونها رصاصي وأبيض. هاي تبين ولو احنا مثل ما قال المحامي احنا مو أطباء، بس هيك قرينا هواية تقارير واحد همنا بالضبط واحد يتعلم تبين بأنه هل أكو كسور لو أكو أضرار. ما تبين كل الأضرار. عندك بس أكثر شيء تبين أضرار العظام. بس أنت إذا تسوي مثلا الأمراي اللي هي الأشعة المغناطيسية والرنين، عندك السي تي، هذول تبين إذا أكو أي تمزق بالأربطة، أي تمزق بالعضلات، أي شيء مو صحيح بمكانه، إذا أكو مثلا تورم وبيها سوائل، بها هواية أشياء تفاصيل غير شكل عن الأشعة. فلذلك هاي واحدة من الفواتير اللي تجينا وجدا مهمة، وهاي واحدة من هاي من الأشياء اللي جدا الأولية أغلبية يسووها. طبعا أكو كلش هواية غير تحاليل نقدر نسويها. تحاليل الأعصاب اللي هي EMG، أكو تحاليل للفك، إذا الفك لأن بالضربة همنا الفك احتمال ما يقعد عدل، هواية غير أشياء أكو. فأكو الأشعة المتحركة همنا عندنا، فأكو كلش هواية يعتمد على الطبيب وين هو يريد يدزك، ولو همنا يعتمد على الأضرار الجسدية اللي عندك همنا.
And just to bring this back to, why this is important, or what this is relevant to for the purposes of a deposition is, they're just going to ask you, did you have these MRIs done, and why did you have the MRIs done? And typically an answer is as simple as, well, there was pain in my back. X-ray didn't show anything. The doctor wanted to see what was going on, so he sent me for an MRI. Something like that.
مثلا يسوي هو الأشعة ويقول أنا بعدني موجوع، مدى يروح للطبيب يدزل للعلاج الطبيعي. العلاج الطبيعي ما يفيد مرات، وراها يدزل بس أشوف صوتي عالي لو لا
زين.
وراها يدزل للأمراي حتى يبين إذا أكو أي أضرار بالعضلة أو بالأربطة.
And so the reason why this is so important is, we went through the two types of claims that you have, generally speaking, when you're involved in a car accident, you're not at fault. For the bodily injury part, the case against the other driver, John, we have a law in Michigan, right, that says you need to meet a certain threshold to pursue these cases.
Yes.
So why is it so important? If you're pursuing a third-party case against the other driver, and you don't have any objective findings, you only have subjective findings, if you could explain the difference. I know it's not the easiest thing, but essentially, if you don't have an MRI or some objective finding in your third-party case, we do have a threshold in Michigan.
Yes.
And the judge may dismiss your case because of this reason. Mm-hmm. And this is a very, very, very tough thing to explain to my clients. In terms of what, if they don't have any objective findings, and I get a motion, I will get a motion for summary essentially to get your case dismissed. And I have to explain to the client, if there's no objective findings, we're probably not going to be in the best position to win that motion and proceed with your case. And
with respect to the bodily injury, the non-economic damages, the pain and suffering.
It could be a huge accident. It could be, a lot of injuries, but if there's no objective findings, you might find yourself in a very bad position, and it's very hard to explain. And I hope we can explain to the listeners what I'm saying.
We do actually with each intake. John goes over it, and I have to
the threshold law.
Yes,
right.
So we have to explain if you do not
absolutely I think
reach that threshold, there is no bodily injury claim. Right. So مثل ما تفضل المحامي، ليش هاي مهمة؟ هاي مهمة. إذا أنت كنت بحادث سيارة وأنت مو غلطان، لازم نثبت للإنشورنس العاتق علينا، اللي إحنا لازم نثبت للإنشورنس بأنه أنت عندك أضرار جسدية.
يعني أنتوا كمكتب
والزبون نفسه. والزبون نفسه.
نعم.
لأن الزبون لازم يروح يسوي تحاليل. إذا هو متضرر والتحاليل تجي ما بيها ضرر، لازم يعرف هذا الزبون بأنه مع الأسف احتمال كلش كبير الحاكم يقول أنت ما عندك أضرار جسدية. هذه الأشياء اللي قدمتوا لي إياها بأنه أنت مبين لا بالأمراي عندك شيء ولا بالأشعة عندك شيء، ما توصل للحد المعين اللي لازم تبدي به القضية، فمعناته ما عندك قضية للعطل وضرر.
نعم.
أوكي. العطل وضرر بيها عدة أشياء لازم أنت عندك إياها حتى هاي القضية تبدي. أنا دائما أقول للزبون من يجي أول مرة أقول له العطل وضرر حاليا 0.
زين. إذا واحد
لازم واحد يتعالج وعنده أول شيء لازم يكون هو مو غلطان، عنده أضرار صحية، عنده أضرار وتبين
بالأمراي وبالأشعة
بأي تحليل.
زين. إذا ما ظهرت وهو عنده ألم يعني هذا شلون مثلا؟
أكثر شيء معناته هذا
عنده
ألم. هذا الألم عضلي بسيط ما يوصل الحد الأدنى حتى تبدي بيها قضية.
It's there, there are some things that are very difficult to explain, and it's how the law is.
And a little bit over, and I think you saw me doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 because that's how you do it.
She divided.
What BI, you have to be not at fault. You have to be,
the objective manifestations.
Sometimes, the law just, sometimes it doesn't make perfect sense to everyone, but it is what the law is in Michigan, and we got to deal with it, right?
Yes. وهذا طبعا مو احنا باختيارنا، هذا القانون هنا الميشيغان. هنا القانون هو القانون، ماكو احد فوق القانون، ما حد يقدر يغير القانون بكيفه ويلعب.
And there are reasons for this, right? So the legislature was trying to limit the amount of cases that were being filed against other people. So they came up with this threshold. Is kind of what I see happened, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it worked, but that was the idea.
I don't know if it worked either.
طبعا الحكومة هي اجت بهالقانون حتى تقلل أو تحط حد معين بأنه مو الكل يجي ويسوي قضية ضد الآخر، بس لذلك لازم أكو أشياء معينة لازم نثبتها قبل ما تكون أكو يعني يصير عندك قضية وتحصل من وراها.
And I think really the basic idea is it's not enough just to say, for the purposes of a bodily injury claim, it's not enough just to say that you were in an accident and you're hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Pain wasn't sufficient.
Right.
The idea is you have to have something more than just pain. Right. For the purposes of a PIP claim, it actually is, right? I mean, essentially, there's an injury-producing event. You're in pain.
Yeah, there's no threshold for the PIP.
That's right. You go to the hospital and you get an X-ray that's negative. It doesn't matter. That's still an allowable expense.
It's a whole different standard.
Yep. That will be absolutely payable by your auto insurance that you paid for. The question is whether or not you can also get a pain and suffering claim, and that is where the threshold comes in.
مثل ما قلت صح، أنت سألتني إذا عندي وجع. الوجع مو كافي فقط. كل واحد يقدر يقول أنا عندي وجع. احتمال واحد ينطخ بزاوية ميز يقول لك عندي وجع، وواحد يزرق وكلش ويورم يقول لك ماكو شيء،
ما عندي وجع
بالضبط. الوجع مو كافي، يريدون تحاليل يبين شكو أكثر من الوجع بالضبط. بينما إذا تروح للمستشفى من وراء الحادث ويسووا لك أشعة حتى يشوفون أنت عندك كسر لو لا، ويطلع ما عندك كسور، الانشورنس لازم تدفع لأن هذا له علاقة بالحادث. فأكو هاي القضيتين كل واحدة شكل،
لأنه راح للمستشفى
كل قضية شكل.
Yeah. So they're going to run through all of your treatment. Yeah. So if you're done treating, obviously you'll have a last day of treatment, the last doctor that you saw. They'll ask you why you stopped treating, and this is a very technical / non-technical question, but it could be very important. If they ask you why you're done treating and you say, I am perfectly fine, I have healed up, everything is great. I've had that.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah, it's good.
right?
It's
Because
good.
that
It's
means
good.
the treatment's worked and they're
Right.
better, and that means the treatment, helped them. And I think in general that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, it is the goal. I have seen that decrease the value of cases sometimes when they are completely done treating and they are completely better.
But it also sometimes increases the value of the case, because then sometimes they say, well, at least we've got an endpoint. We know exactly what's being claimed, and we know how much our exposure is going to be.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends.
Sometimes me and John disagree, and I think this is one where
I mean, it's both, right?
know,
it goes both ways, is
yeah.
what I'm saying.
I mean, look, it's good. It's good for the client that they have, they're done treating, they're perfectly fine. But in my opinion, it does hurt the bodily injury part, because when my client's still hurting and still treating, the uncertainty of when the treatment will end or when the pain will end,
right,
sometimes helps your case in getting more value.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, yeah. It all depends. It all depends on what the insurance companies.
Just look at
stances on the case.
Look at it if you present it to a jury,
right?
And in terms of a client that's still hurting, still injured, still treating, and compared to someone that treated for 5 or 6 months and completely healed, I think they will award more money in terms of the person that's still injured and the person that's still.
And I absolutely agree. Sometimes. But I'm gonna say why. So let's say you've got 2 accidents, right? One was a horrible accident where the person gets into a horrible crash. They have multiple broken bones. They have to have surgeries, and they're treating for years. Absolutely, right? If they're still treating 3 years out, I mean, people are going to say, "Hey, I understand." But then take another case where maybe it's a parking lot accident where there was a minor fender bender with a little bit of a scratch on the bumper, and they're still treating 3 years out. I think a jury might not want to award more on that case. They might go the opposite direction and say, "You know what? This is a complete fraud, and I'm going to shut it down."
So, this is actually what we do a lot in the office.
I know.
Obviously every lawyer is different.
Every day we do it.
Every day we do it. So, sometimes we kind of not argue, but this is good arguments.
Right.
Yes.
This actually helps the clients. I
Absolutely.
give you my arguments. You give me your arguments. We have 10 lawyers in the office. We can all butt each other's heads off and getting the best arguments for our clients. But it's at the end of the day, it's good for our clients. It helps us kind of stay in the groove of things.
And how many times do we come to each other about cases? We're like, "Hey, so what do you think about this? What do you think about that?"
Day.
I mean, it's every day.
Every day.
And
so,
all we handle is car accidents. So, John, me, go to any lawyer in the office. They handle 100% car accidents. They're familiar with the law. They're experts at the law.
Yep.
It's a good thing to have. It's a good thing to be able to bounce ideas off of each other.
Absolutely.
And we have an open door policy in the office where everybody can come into any office and ask questions. And
absolutely.
John knows.
Right? Oh yeah, I've talked to every single one of the lawyers about various cases. I'll literally just walk down the row and I'll see a door open and I'll pop in and say, "Hey, I got a thought."
How many times have you gotten a good idea from another lawyer that you didn't think of? Right?
All the time.
For me, I'm the first one to say it. Sometimes I'll go to you. I'll go to Sean or Preston and say, "Hey, what do you guys think about this?" And they'll give me a good idea.
I always say,
right?
In our field, I think every day there is something new.
Absolutely.
Every day.
Okay. Yeah. Translate.
Let's take a little break.
For you, break.
5-minute break.
just the gist.
مثل ما قلنا بأنه العلاج مهم يعتمد على التسوية. إذا أنت العلاج مالتك وسويت تحاليل وتحاليلك كلها سلبية ماكو قضية. مثل ما قالوا المحامين ومو بس هم اثنيناتهم، هواية محامين، وكل المحامين اللي بالمكتب ماكو اثنين يتفقون على شغلة واحدة، لأن كل واحد عنده فكرة. وهذا احنا طبعا بالمكتب فشي جدا حلو، كل واحد الباب مالته مفتوحة. أي سؤال عندك، أي شيء تريد تروح تسأل عندك محامين كل واحد عنده فكرة. ومرات نقعد سوا ونقول أوكي هذا هيك شو قرر مثلا.
بس كلها توصل لمنفعة الزبون.
طبعا أكيد هي كلها المنفعة الزبون.
صح.
فالمرات بأنه تقول بأنه أوكي أنا إذا حادثك كبير ورا 3 سنين بعد تقدر تتعالج بيها باب وجواب، صح؟ بيها يعني عين النظر.
قضية يعني
عين النظر نعم. صح. بس إذا أنت قاعد
حادث
سيارة كلش صغيرة بالباركينج لات انت واقف ويجي واحد وهيك يشخطك شوية وانت 3 سنين، صدقني هيئة المحالفين يقول أنا آسف هذا الحكي كله مو صحيح. بس هم أكو يعتمد. يعني احنا دائما نقول ماكو قضيتين وحده تشبه الاخ، مستحيل.
صح.
حتى لو اثنين حتى لو اثنين قاعدين بنفس السياره،
كل واحد شكل علم،
كل واحد قضيته شكل.
صحيح.
ماكو قضيتين. دائما يخابرون جيراني اخذ هالقد واني ما اخذت هالقد. يما والله كل واحد طبيبه شكل، كل واحد مثل احتمال مالته بالامراي شكل، كل واحد جسمه شكل.
Their pre-existing is different. Their policy limits are different.
الأضرار الصحية اللي هم عندهم قبل الحادث وورا الحادث شكل.
العمر يلعب دوره،
العمر، حتى البوليسي مالتك ايش قد بيها
تفرق،
كل شيء يفرق. فهذا واحدة من الأشياء اللي احنا
Right. Just a word of advice to the listeners: please do not listen to your relatives or someone about what they got on a case. Like I said, you have to trust your lawyer, and if you do trust your lawyer, he'll give you good advice. He or she will give you good advice. Every case is different, so when we hear that sort of thing, it's great, but at the same time, believe me, it has nothing to do with your case. And if you have a good lawyer that's going to fight for your rights, that's all you really need. You don't need to listen to anybody else.
There's no need to listen to anybody. بالضبط. هي همنا اكو شغله مثل يصير، يعني بيوت بصف بيت.
صحيح.
هذا انباع ب 400 وهذا ينطوا له 350. مدى ينطوا؟ شنو السبب؟ غير اكو ديفرنس، يعني اكو شغلات.
اكثر واكبر نصيحه ننطيها للجاليه، رجاء اذا عندك انت اذا عندك محامي، اولا ثق بالمحامي مالتك. لا الاهل ولا الجيران ولا الأصدقاء ولا محامي آخر يقدر يساعدك، لأنه ما يعرفون. المحامي الآخر كل شيء ما يعرف عن قضيتك يعني.
And they don't know much. And on top of that, so we are a growing office, right? I'm a pretty relatively young lawyer that that's has a bigger office. So as you can tell, other lawyers in the area are probably not the happiest with us, because we're young and we get in a lot of business and we do a great job. So I found that certain lawyers will say bad things about you, and just like hiring an electrician that came in after someone else, right? They're gonna say he messed this up and that up and this.
Even the doctor.
Don't go with
exactly. Right. Even a doctor, you go to the next doctor, they say, oh well, they should have done this and this and that.
Yeah.
Listen, if you have a real case, there's things that there's insurance for everything.
Exactly. Very simple. Two people, they had cold. Each one's symptoms is different. This is
each one they give him different medicine.
بالضبط. اثنيناتهم عندهم نشلة، كل واحد ينطي دواء شكل، لأن كل واحد عنده الأعراض غير شكل. صح ولا مو صحيح؟ هاي أبسط شيء.
فكيف بالقضية
بالضبط.
مئات الألوف.
نرجع ونقول نصيحة بأنه أنت المحامي مالتك تروح الغير محامي. أولا محامي لورنس بعده ما أريد أقول بالبداية، بس بعد عمره صغير. المحامين المدارنا شوي أكبر. المحامين يحبون واحد مو بس المحامين، حتى الأطباء. أي مكان تروح،
حتى أنا وأنت، أنا وهو.
محلات
واحد صف اللاقي
تبيع الخضرة، واحد يحكي على
المحل، واحد صف اللاقي نزلها قسنت.
بالضبط. المحامي الآخر ما يعرفك، ما يعرف قضيتك من البداية للنهاية، ما يقدر ينطيك النصيحة الصحيحة 100%. هاي وحدة. الأهل طبعا نفس الشيء، الأقارب، الأصدقاء. فرجاء إذا تأخذ محامي اعتمد على المحامي مالتك، وإذا أكو شيء ما مقتنع به اتصل به، قل أنا ما مقتنع، سأله على ما تقتنع.
سمعت شيء.
بالضبط. إذا أي شيء عند أي اعتراض عندك اتصل، نقعد وياك. البيبان
مفتوحة
من 9 ل5، 5 أيام بالأسبوع مفتوحة. تليفوناتنا مفتوحة، شو وقت ما تتصلون بينا نرجع نتصل بيكم. أي شيء تحتاجون احنا موجودين. هاي النصيحة، أكبر نصيحة أن أقدر أنطيها للجالية حاليا.
فعلا جمال حلو.
And it seems to be a thing that we just kind of hear within our community. I don't let it bother me. You know, if you don't trust your lawyer, it's, you know, your case is just not going to be very smooth. And that's kind of what it's about.
بالضبط. إذا ما تثق بالمالتك المحامي، مع الأسف قضيتك ما راح تكون ناجحة همينة، راح تصير بها عراقيل هواية، لأن أنت تقول شيء والمحامي دا يحاول يسوي لك شيء وأنت ضد هالشيء وتحكي ورا ويا غير أحد وتفكير يكون كله مخربط.
For what it's worth, I don't think it's much of an issue. I mean, most of the time when I talk to people, you just have to explain what the facts are and why they're doing why they're getting what they're getting.
Generally
right?
not an issue, right?
I mean, 99 times out of 100. I mean, I almost never hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I literally just had a settlement that I worked on with one of our clients the other day, and you know, he said, "Well, you know, there was a guy," and he started to say, you know, he had a similar injury than me, and his lawyer was trying to get him, you know, $5,000 more than what we were talking about, and then he went on to tell me that they also spent, you know, 2.5 additional years, and they had to go to trial to get that extra $5,000 and spend an additional $10,000 in costs to get that $5,000. And I was like, okay, so it sounds pretty reasonable what we just did here.
I mean,
he agreed.
time and money. Exactly. مثل دائما أقول الألف اللي تحصلها اليوم مو مثل الألف اللي حصلتها قبل كم شهر. قبل كم شهر كانت الألف أكثر من ما هسه. صح لا مو صحيح. فالوقت يلعب دور مهم جدا. لذا دائما أنا أقول أحسن من تصير أكو تسوية، وطبعا المحامي يكون كل الصريح ويا الزبون بأنه يقول له أنصحك بأنه تأخذ هالمبلغ، لو أنصحك لا أنا أقول لك خلنا نصعد للمحكمة لا تأخذه بالضبط.
And not only that, his friend who was going to trial, who's trying to get $5,000 more than him, hadn't won the trial. They hadn't even gone yet. So that it was still ongoing.
وخاصة إحنا ويا الجالية مالتنا النقطة الكبرى بأنه مترجمين كلش تاخذ هوايه من فلوس القضيه، ومن نصعد للمحكمه العليا من يسوون افاده للاطباء، من يسوون افاده للثيرابي، من يسوون افاده لاي احد، حتى للشرطي. هذا كلها لازم مصاريف تطلع من القضيه. فاذا القضيه تسوى بعد 1000 لو 2000 لو 5000 لو 10,000 بالاخير راح تخسرها، لانه هاي الاشياء كلها راح تطلع من عندها.
Yeah, so I think if just talking it out most of the times resolves any questions.
Yes.
أهم شيء لازم يعني احكي ويا مالتك المحامي ونوصل إلى حل.
ونذكر طبعا كل مستمعينا كل مشاهدينا أنه تليفون المكتب، تليفون قاجي لو فيرم هو
248-702-6641. 248-702-6641.
Yes. So we'll just kind of wrap up the last part. So after the treatment concludes, you know, they will generally ask how you're feeling right now. So as of today, as we sit here, how are you feeling? Are you having pain? And you know, if you claimed a back injury or a leg injury, are you still having pain? And what are your future plans for treatment? They're going to ask that. So what do you plan on doing? Do you plan on continuing to treat? Do you plan on having a surgery, or what's going to happen in the future? And sometimes you don't know, right? Sometimes you don't know.
Exactly.
I do not know the future.
Yes.
I'll tell you. Wish I did.
Especially when it comes to treatment, right?
When it comes to anything, I don't know the future.
طبعا باقي لنا تقريبا 6 دقائق.
بالضبط. السؤال الآخر اللي ينطرح بأنه يسألوك أنت شلونك هاليوم، كيف حالك اليوم، شلون صحتك اليوم. راح تحكي على صحتك اليوم، انت ما راح تعرف باكر شو راح يصير ولا المستقبل. والفات فات بعد ما ينترجع. فدائما انت تحكي على الوقت اللي انت بيه الحاضر. بينما هل تتوقع راح تصير زين بعد اسبوع؟ ما اعرف. اسبوعين ما اعرف. بعد ساعه ما ادري. صح لا مو صحيح؟ فواحد لازم يكون جدا جدا حذر ودقيق من يجاوب على الأسئلة. مثل ما قلنا الأسئلة من تتجاوب بأقصر الممكن بنعم أو لا، أو يعني أعرف أتذكر لو ما أتذكر لو ما أعرف.
So I do want one word of advice to our listeners. If you are still injured at the time of the deposition, I would advise not, we're never going to do this, but especially at this stage, don't exaggerate any of your injuries, right? So if you're telling a defense lawyer that I can't do this or that, and they have you on surveillance doing certain things, you're not going to look very good in front of a jury. So if there's certain things that you can do, maybe you have good days, John, right? Maybe you have a
100%.
couple days out of the week where you can go and take a walk and your pain is not as bad and the other 5 days are bad. Mention that to them, because what if they get you on surveillance doing something that you said you couldn't do? So I would mention, if you can do certain things, if you have a couple good days out of the week, mention that.
Yep.
الشيء المهم جدا بأنه إذا أنت متضرر يوم الحادث، هاي نصيحة جدا مهمة. إذا أنت تكون بيوم الإفادة بعدك متضرر، لا تكبر ولا تأول، كون صريح. جدا مهم. من تكبر وتأول راح تقلل من قيمة القضية مالتك، لأنه دا يشوفوك، فراح يبين بأنه أنت دا تكبرها ومو دا تحكي الصراحة، وراح تبين قدامهم أنت مو صريح.
باقي لنا ثواني.
Yep. But I got to say,
last words.
yeah, well, I just want to say, they shouldn't exaggerate, but they also shouldn't minimize their injuries either. Because I have people who are like, well, I want to, got to be strong. And it's like, well, now hold on.
Especially in our culture.
Right.
You see the men doing this a lot. Right?
Yes.
They don't want, they are usually generally, want to be manly.
Right. Oh, a lot of the time.
Okay.
And they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm totally fine. Well, wait a minute, you just told me you're feeling pain every day. Yeah, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's like, well, wait a minute, just tell them what it is.
Right.
مستمعينا الأكارم، مشاهدينا الأعزاء، نشكر thank you Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, we had a lot of medical talk today, so
Yeah, we did.
And you are doctor in your
He's a doctor of law.
Doctor of law, yeah.
Yes.
True.
Well, thank you Mr. John.
Thank you so much.
شكرا جزيلا ست تمارا.
يا أهلا وسهلا.
دائما احنا نتعبج. مستمعينا مشاهدينا، كنا بحلقة ممتعة وجميلة. معنا كان المحامي لورنس قاجي والمحامي جان شرودر، وأيضا الأخت العزيزة تمارا. نلتقيكم إن شاء الله في الأسبوع القادم حلقة جديدة إن شاء الله. إلى اللقاء.